went to Swarthmore, right?
Yes.
And you went to Howard, right?
Yes.
Now, the things that you had learned or that we are talking about, what class did they actually set up the class to teach this in? None of them? So it was fortunate that you had learned how to do what you had learned how to do, is that right?
Yes.
Because they're not about to teach you any of this. Half the kids that go to these schools, by the time they get there, I'm talking about like the University of Memphis and other places, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, half of them have been to school over at Hebrew, the little, what do they call it?
Memphis? Is it Memphis?
It's Memphis Hebrew School, but they got a name for it.
Took the real nice one out there.
Yeah, yeah,
Back up in the woods.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's the letter A mean, Justin? A means ox. Now half those kids, by the time they get to University of Memphis, they've learned Aleph. All we've learned on our side of town is that A means apple. So we're behind. No, they don't teach it in school. They teach A means apple. They don't teach that A in Hebrew is Aleph, and that in Arabic, what is it? Aleph, not Aleph. Aleph. But it means the same thing. It means ox. And y'all learn it means alpha, right?
I didn't learn that in school.
Oh, well, then you just answered your question, didn't you?
Yeah.
So they don't teach it in school.
No.
Yeah. So what's vitamin again?
Vita.
Okay, and what's vitamin?
Vita is life.
Okay.
And the other part is amen.
Now I'm in
Men.
men, and men is the abbreviation for the word.
It didn't say that.
Yes, it did. It said it was talking to you about minerals. Wasn't it talking to you about minerals?
He said it even if it's not there. He did say no.
M-I-N is the beginning of the word minerals. And so sometimes when you abbreviate the word, you'll have mineral.
Right.
So you have life's minerals, vitamin. Oh, you pulled it up. You have it. Okay. That's what it says right there. From the Latin vita, which means what? Life. Plus, they've got a mean here, which is going to be min, which is going to deal with mineral. So life's minerals is what you're looking at. All right? Now, and I'm suggesting you're going to have to learn how to go through. And see, I don't like electronic stuff. I like the dictionary. And that's why I want you so desperately to learn the dictionary. You know,
That actually is a dictionary.
even though it is, I want you to learn from this thing that Noah Webster created in the American Lexicon. Who created the dictionary in the British lexicon? What was his name?
Oxford.
They created a dictionary in Oxford, but I want to think his name was Samuel Johnson, wasn't it? But look up Samuel. I think it was Samuel Johnson.
Yes, where you get
I'm pretty sure it was Samuel Johnson. Yeah. See, Dictionary of the English.
Wow.
That's him.
You need to be ashamed of yourself.
Who?
You
What?
pull that up like that. I mean,
He looked like
How long have you been knowing me?
a brother.
24. That's what it is.
How long have you been watching me do that?
As long as I've known you.
Okay, so I ain't gonna be ashamed of that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I've been doing this a long time. I know dictionary better than dictionary. No dictionary. But I need you to do that. I know I've depended on these folks to do that. Yeah, they have to know the dictionary better than the dictionary.
You
That's
better.
the only thing that can get you through this. You've got to do the work. You cannot, I know you think that she's going to send you to college, right? Right. Why do you think that?
Yeah, well,
Has she been planning to send you to college?
now that's correct.
You've been planning to send him to college.
He just trying to.
What did I used to tell y'all? Who's gonna send you to college?
So it's that we can't send ourselves to college.
You were gonna send yourself to college, and that's the only thing you have to depend on is yourself. Did you go find anything about Jay Rogers? You mean to tell me last week in class, I asked you about Jay Rogers, and you had a whole week to find out something about it, and you didn't try to find anything out? Why not? I'm just curious.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Listen. If you come to class with me and we start going over some different things, you try to go find out about it for yourself. Don't take my word for anything. All right? She said that Father Divine, what else did he do besides them accusing him of being nuts? Because he said that the people were God.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, he said that back then. And they would actually look at each other and they would say, peace, God. They had no problems with that. And he was trying to help them understand God wasn't some white man out there in the sky somewhere. What does it say? I can't see it.
Father Divine, also known as Reverend M.J. Divine, was an African American spiritual leader from about 1707 until his death. 1907 to his death. His full self-given name was Reverend Major Jealous Divine,
Yep.
and he was also known as the messenger.
Who was the next person known as the messenger after
Elijah
after Father Divine?
Elijah Muhammad, right?
Yes. Yes. And so understand, what does that tell you?
There was a relationship. There was a continuity there.
So now there's continuity in a lot of different things, but we won't never see it. We won't ever see it if we don't do some work to bring these things together. Yes.
Isn't Father Divine kind of the inspiration for Reverend Ike?
Kind of, not quite, but in a way.
Right.
Reverend Ike really gets his inspiration from Noble Drew Ali.
Oh.
And he was a part of Noble Drew Ali's More Science of America when it first started out of New Jersey.
Really?
Yeah.
That explains
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, but not just him, others. But most of them, all of them, got their inspiration from Father Divine, including the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who had been a member of
The Moorish side.
Timothy Drew's group, More Science Temple. You follow me?
Yes.
And once you understand how to make the connections, like we're always talking about the Black Panthers, you can't talk about the Black Panthers with any sense of knowledge if you don't know anything about the African Blood Brotherhood. So now in our sight, all of this is there, but Father Divine was someone that was not about to get stopped. And even though, like Reverend Ike, and not just Reverend Ike, but who else? There was some more folks. Reverend Ike,
Was Daddy Grace involved?
Daddy Grace, well, they were all doing this particular work. But Reverend Ike got charged, I think, by the IRS and the FBI. Who was supplying the information to the IRS and the FBI? Just like they supplied the information about Father Divine. Who was supplying that information? But why is it important that you actually start learning about these people? What do you think? Maybe this is boring? This is not something you might want to learn about these people?
No, sir.
You might want to learn something about them? You might. Okay. Who else we got in there then? Oh, I tell you, a great one to learn something about. See this guy right here? Click on him and see what we got in there. John D. Jackson. How many of you have read his works? You have, David. I know you've read his works.
That
Huh?
Civilizations.
This is Ethiopia in the origin of civilization. What year is this?
1939.
1939. Yes.
But I got to say something. You always said that his book, The Introduction to
African civilization. Yeah.
even though it's called
Introduction. The average black person does not have enough information
Right.
that will allow them to read that book without taking the chance of going stark raving mad.
Right, and I did read it, and it is, yeah, it went over my head, but I did catch some references that if I did.
Sing it, David.
Okay. If I had not read Joel Augustus Rogers and
That's right. You got to. That's right.
and
Start
also-
at the beginning.
and also bits and pieces of Anacalypsis,
There you go.
I would have never gotten the
There you
references
go.
in there. So.
But understand, we want to know everything without knowing anything.
Right.
Instead, you have to start somewhere. So you start at the beginning, at the basic premise. How do you develop a premise? How do you develop a premise?
You gotta have a principle, come to a conclusion, two other things.
Okay, well, that's what you learn in school. But what you learned from your grandfather and from your father was you had to have a stake. And from that stake, you create a square. You create a square by having a string, and you now would actually set that string into a position where it becomes a square. That square becomes your foundation. Your foundation is your premise. We are right now sitting in a premise. This premise is this room that we're in on these premises. The mathematical aspect of developing this building, of developing any building, and you're developing your life, it has to be set up on a premise.
Four right angles.
4 right angles. And you have to know how to mathematically bring these angles together in order to stand on the square correctly. What we've not been doing is we've not been learning the basic foundational work that we need in order to stand upon the square. And if you can't do that, then you won't be on the level. And if you're not on the level, you won't be able to understand truth. What is it?
I'll just read something Reverend Ike said.
What do you say?
He said, the best thing you can do for the poor is not to be one of them.
Yeah,
He said that every Sunday.
it makes sense.
And one thing about it, I'm suggesting that we have everything on this site that can answer all those questions that y'all asking every day. What group is it?
Haitians,
The group that I have on that site is ninjas.
ninjas.
Why do I want people to study ninjas if they want to study
They
oppressed people?
overcame oppression. They were
How did
fighting-
they overcome oppression?
Well, they were fighting the shogun and the what's those other
The Japanese is basically what you're talking about. When you say shogun, you're talking about Japanese.
yeah.
Okay, so then it spread into Japan. And what we had was a group in the mountains, and they were peasants.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they lived by the same rule that peasants lived by before they created a constitution in this country. It was
Yeah.
the same rule.
What were the group, the lords that were given the lands? What were they called? Samurai.
Well, samurai was a group. They weren't the lords, and they weren't given the lands. They usually worked for the lords, who actually controlled the lands, the samurai. They were a different class.
Okay.
And they were matter of fact, when I say the original ninja, the original groups, they were peasants. Well, peasants aren't allowed to like ride horses, you know. And in this country, they weren't allowed to ride horses.
Well, in England either.
Well, that's why they came up with the Constitution here
We
to
do a
create
locomotion.
this- Right,
Yeah.
right. That's exactly right. So now, when we're looking at this thing, we have to look at it like whatever was going on here, let's say in France or in Russia, was going on in China.
Basically all
and
over the
Japan.
planet.
So there are people all over the planet who have really suffered oppression. And there are people who have overcome oppression all over the planet. Well, why aren't we studying some of them? Yes,
You don't really want to know the answer to that, do you?
I really do. What?
What about the Jewish people?
I think that the Jews in what you now call Israel was some people that you better get busy trying to study what they did in order to acquire a nation state
So you would
that you
go
call
to
Israel.
Theodore Herzl.
You would have to go back to Herzl in order to get to Zionism and in order to get to the inception of the political aspect of Judaism relative to Israel, which is Zionism. So you'd have to go back to Theodore Herzl. But if you're not willing to do the work, you're only going to get bits and pieces of information. You're going to think you know something, and then later it's going to come out all scatterbrained, and it's not going to get us anywhere. The element of language became something central to the overcoming of that oppression.
Either they overcame it or those that were doing the oppressing forced their language, thus their
In order to
concepts on.
control the people
Absolutely.
that they were oppressing. That's
Absolutely.
right. That's right. And that's, as a matter of fact, now we're getting to the origins of the English language. The origins of the language that came from and came out of the Anglo-Saxons creating a language that they controlled. That was not Latin, that was not French, that was not language that was coming down from William the Conqueror or some other group. And they were creating a language so that they could communicate among themselves. And that's what you've got to do. And that's what you're not willing to do. So everybody's blaming everything on white people. But it's not white people. It's what you're not willing to do. 9, if you're not willing to study the dictionary, if you're going to play with this thing and play with yourself and your genius, because you've got a genius about you that you're not using. And if you choose to play with that genius, that rests. Wait a minute. Do you know the story of Aladdin?
Spirit.
The tutelary spirit
Right.
inside of him, because he actually, his physical body is the lamp. The lamp is symbolic of the body. And in the body there's a fire, there's a flame, there's a thing in there that actually is represented by the genie being awakened. The I, the self, God.
And so this story, like most Disney stories and most other stories that we tell ourselves, are about us. And it's good to find out what these stories mean. It can help us to learn about who we are.
And a little while ago, we were talking about if you wanted to study and oppress people, one of the best people that you can learn to study are ninjas. Why ninjas? It's on the site now for everybody to know, but why? Why ninjas?
How they train them, their
How
children.
did they train their children?
Well, about how to walk in stealth, about how to endure.
So one of the stories about the ninjas is how the old man who actually started this group, how he made a commitment to never allow himself or his children to ever be oppressed again. Never again. And he was going to do something to change this. And he started with the next child born. And the next child born, when the child, as soon as the child was large enough, he took the child and he hung the child from a stick that they had placed above the ground. And then the child had to actually hang there for as long as it could. And usually it would fall. And he would pick the child back up and put it up there again. And they'd fall again. But now every day he would put that child on that stick that was hanging there. Eventually that child could hang there for hours and eventually days. And eventually that child had to learn how to actually swim. And then swim out into, and then go beneath the water and actually take what do you call it, a weed?
A reed.
A reed.
Hollow.
And actually place it in where it created what you now call scuba. and allowed him to breathe underwater so that he wouldn't be seen by people actually chasing him or something. Then he taught the baby, the child, taught him how to go out and find a leaf and grind the leaf and then find other vegetation and grind it and actually make themselves a peel. And they actually are suggesting that pharmaceutical industry that we know today was created by this process, because they actually taught themselves how to make this little peel that they could actually ingest, and it would give them all the nutrients to get them through a day. And that's something.
I know they were people, the oppressed people were terrified. I mean, they hated the ninja
Why did they hate the ninja?
because they wouldn't fight them on their terms.
You talking about the ones who were running things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the oppressors, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they wanted them to come out and fight conventionally.
And they wouldn't do that.
No.
And they became the best spies. They became the best at being able to disguise themselves. But then the average ones of us know nothing about disguise in order to survive. A lot of the people that you're relative to, do you know that's why they were shuffling and scratching?
That was the intent.
Right,
They were disguising themselves because they felt that if they didn't do this properly, they're subject to take off and fly. And you know, people once upon a time, they said that this particular group of people could fly. And they had to learn how to control themselves well enough to stay down here on the ground. And so they wouldn't be seen so easily. But now you just want to holler and shout. You want to be seen. You want to go and do things and holler and shout at the people that you need to be putting to sleep.
Could it be that the children didn't know that the older people were, when they were shuffling, they were faking?
Do you know over a long period of time, y'all forgot that y'all was faking, and now y'all think that's how you really got to live.
Kind of
So
like,
They're
that
still
could
doing the
be-
same thing.
That could be how y'all
They're
became,
doing it without an intention.
it could be how y'all became inferior people.
Yeah. That's what happened here in Memphis, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yes.
So for me, the question is, how would you consider the ninja an oppressed people then? Does it make sense?
They
Because
started out an oppressed people, but they took one child,
Okay,
and over a period of time, they multiplied that one child
I see.
into a number of children. And it took them years
They
to
had a
develop
real
a group
commitment.
of children that were no longer children.
Right.
And they actually had done the work that it takes to be done so that you never have to worry about that again.
That's kind of how Zionism grew when they sent for the kids out of the
Out of where?
New York City. I know
Where else?
the
In
London.
Russia, they came from St. Petersburg. They came from Moscow. In France, they came from Paris. In England, they came from London. In the United States, they came from New York, from Chicago. From all over, they came out the streets. And they managed to get those children to what you now call Israel.
Mhm.
What you now call Palestine. Yes.
Just a interesting thing about that I read a couple of years ago, and I can never verify it or not. Theodore Herzl, before he got to what is now Israel, he was looking at different places for a state.
Not so much was he looking at
Right.
different places.
Right.
But different places were being suggested. One place was Uganda.
That's what I was about to say.
Understand, understand.
And
There were a number of places. Before Palestine, we have to go and we have to look up the Balfour Declaration in order to actually find this. And now you can actually get to the real information. But the most important thing about those children you're talking about, they were used to build and create the kibbutz.
Mhm.
And your children actually building and creating the kibbutz that they had to now live in and grow in and develop in, and over a period of time, guess what they built downstairs? That
Gun
people didn't even know-
manufacturing.
people didn't even know that there was a downstairs. They didn't even know it existed down under. They had dug down beneath the buildings that they had built, where the government of the Arab governments had said they could build these buildings. And they actually dug holes in the ground and created basements that they put their gun factories in.
Mhm.
And they taught themselves to build weapons.
Very, very simple and effective.
And now that place became a country, and now it has one of the, you talking about aviation before,
Mhm.
and you're talking about Douglas and Boeing and all. Well, in Israel, they have a group of people that actually can compete with all of the aviation companies in this country,
Mhm.
all of the gun companies in this country. They can
They make
compete.
some outstanding weapons.
They make some outstanding watermelons. And they can grow them in the desert.
Really?
They are
Yes.
growing them in.
They can grow them in the desert. Yeah. And now understand something. If we're going to study some people that have been oppressed people that have actually come up, why aren't we studying this group of people?
10% of all the bullets that America used come from Israel.
Wow.
Isn't that something? So I'm still saying, why aren't we studying that group of people? They were just some children coming out the streets.
They created that Mossad.
Mossad became the intelligence agency
Mhm.
that actually evolved out of what they did when they were fighting the English,
Mhm.
when they were getting back in. The best way for you to understand how they created those groups is there's two books that you can actually study the information out of. One is called Hajj, and the other is called Exodus.
Mhm.
Both are written by who?
Leon Eric
Uris.
Uris.
Yes, and that will
Hajj
give
and what?
Hajj and
And
Exodus. And you can watch, matter of fact, with Exodus, you can just watch the movie. But don't be
Sound
lazy
video.
just by watching the movie and don't do the work. I need you to read the books. All right? You know, but it was something you're supposed to do. I don't want time to get, what? You shaking your head no? You weren't supposed to do anything?
Not to my knowledge.
Yes, you were. You were supposed to do some, do the girl on the rope or something.
Oh, something like that. Well, I've already done that one with something weird.
Is that right? Well, do one, Justin.
I don't know which one you want me to do.
We'll figure one out. We'll do
All
it.
right.
You remember those
The girl.
those things we used to do where you would give these set of
That's what we're about to do.
all right, okay,
That's what we're about to
okay,
do.
okay,
But
okay.
I think the one that you want us to do, we may have already done, but we can try. We'll try the a woman. You gave the answer away. That's the
When?
answer. Never mind. Okay.
Just then.
That's the
Yeah,
answer.
you gave it away.
It's the music started
Yes, the
and she
music started
died,
and she died.
and you gave answer away. We'll do
Did
another
I?
one. Yeah. We have to confer for a minute. I'm sorry.
Man, I love that.
Well, there's so many stories that we can actually utilize to learn.
I'm lost, so I don't know what y'all.
It's
No
a
problem.
critical thinking exercise, right?
They are. They
Yeah.
are. And the object is to think critically about these things that we keep
To
talking
how to
about.
ask questions.
And how to answer questions.
Mhm.
And we've got to learn how to ask the questions. And the majority of us at this point, we ask bad questions. You know, so then
You
when
mean
we get
you mean? Well, what about stupid questions?
we ask stupid questions.
But I thought there was no such thing as a stupid question.
Well, if you thought that, it's something wrong with you. Or it's something wrong with the person that actually taught that into you, that indoctrinated you with that nonsense. There are real stupid questions, you
All
know.
right, we got one. It's a hard one.
Let's go.
Oh, just
Okay.
oh no.
Oh, I remember. Now you have to tell me if we've done this before.
I ain't telling you.